from the heart. Stories honest and true. The one, the only. The Human Canvas U. Hello and welcome to the Human Canvas, the podcast where we explore our unique lived experiences, exploring the lives of people from all walks, diving into their unique journeys, their challenges, their passions, and the moments that have shaped who they are today. I'm your host, Nicholas Graham Hall, and today I'm honored to welcome to the podcast Executive Director, Animal Advocate, and Hoosier Locavore, Sherri Dugger. Hi, Sherri.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Sherri and I first met here in Bloomington, Indiana, and but Sherri has had quite a life. I think you started your life in Indiana, is that right?
I did. I
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
But then, and you know, what's your, Sherri, what's your role today in
Oh,
the world?
in
I
the
know you
world
have many, I
today.
know you have many roles, but specifically, your vocation, your day job, as they say here.
Yeah, I'm the executive director of Socially Responsible Agriculture Project. It's a national organization, national nonprofit organization that helps communities mobilize to protect themselves from the harms of industrial agriculture, mostly in rural communities across the country.
So, a lot of people know it. When you say it quickly, people say SRAP,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
SRAP, because the name is a mouthful. But can you say it again? So, and I've said it plenty of times, and you know what? It's like socially responsible. I'm
And then you
there. And
forget.
then I go advocacy, agriculture. So
Yeah.
socially responsible,
Agriculture Project,
ag,
sraproject.org, if you want to go look at it online. Yeah.
right on. And so if you were explaining it to someone in like really simple, in simple terms that they might be able to visualize in their mind, how might you explain it to the outsider that doesn't really understand the food system, and they think everything gets, everything is just in the grocery store, which is understandable because most of us are not living on farms anymore. Um, so how would you explain the work of SRAP?
For sure. And I want to come back to this later on, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think after we talk a little bit about my history and sort of how I came to this work, it will make more sense. But I think
Yeah.
just as an elevator pitch, as I mentioned, we help communities protect themselves. So essentially, SRAP works as a 911 kind of a hotline phone number. We get
Hmm.
phone calls or emails from folks who find us through Google searches or through word of mouth. Essentially, most people believe that probably animals are raised in bucolic green pastures around the country in terms of before they become food on our plates. And
Mm.
really, that looks like, what that system looks like, is animals raised, sometimes thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of animals. Being kept in for their entirety of their lives, being kept and housed in barns, large football field size barns and manure lagoons that are behind them, and taking it out all of the waste of those animals as they are raised for food within the system, and then processed and when they make it their way to the grocery,
Yeah.
as you mentioned. But these
So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so I just had the chance lately these past couple of months to do some pretty significant road trips,
Sure.
east to west, north to south. And so hit a lot of highways.
Yeah.
And along the highways, there were times when I would look off to my left or look off to my right, and I would see these really long buildings.
Yep.
And they were about 1 story high.
Mm-hmm.
There usually were like four to six, maybe eight of them.
Yeah.
Big fans.
Yep.
Uh, large, looks like a pond.
Yeah, that's the manure lagoon.
Farmland around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the middle of Nebraska or wherever,
Or
um,
Indiana.
or Indiana or wherever, right? Or
Yeah.
Mississippi, where I was.
Yeah.
If people see those, if they can, is that what you were talking about here?
Absolutely, yeah.
right?
That's what I'm talking about. And oftentimes, because of those huge football field size manure lagoons that are sitting there, and
Yeah.
the manure is normally sprayed onto those fields that you're seeing around those operations, as fertilizer to get rid of some of that waste. Those operations are oftentimes sited next to low-income communities or communities of color because those operations bring a lot of environmental harms, a lot of public health harms, a lot of concerns with them, and costs essentially for externalized costs from the doing business, essentially. And those, by externalized costs, I mean the communities around them sort of bear the brunt of those costs. And that's the public health problems, the quality of life problems, the environmental pollution, et cetera, that comes with those operations because of millions of animals being housed within those buildings that you're describing. So we actually go to work to, as I said, we're kind of like a 911 phone number,
Mhm.
crisis line. Oftentimes people will hear of these operations coming in, or these operations are already there and they're already polluting the water, the air, et cetera. And so folks will call us just trying to figure out what they can do to either stop this operation from coming in or to, try to hold these corporations that are behind those operations accountable for the pollution that's being caused, for the quality of life problems that are occurring, the public health issues that are arising in their communities, et cetera. So there's a lot of problems that come with those operations, and they are very often cited very specifically next to communities that essentially don't have a lot of power or a lot of resources to fight back. And so, what we do as a national nonprofit is to essentially try to work to level the playing field for those communities.
Mhm.
To know their rights, to be able to participate in the process to either stop that operation from coming in, or to, as I said, hold those corporations accountable for what's happening within their community.
Okay, so how in the world did you get involved in an organization like this? I mean,
Yeah.
it's to me, it's one of those things where uh, you can you can read about it, you can hear about it, um, but I imagine to really have the passion and the drive and the interest to really do the work. Um, it is probably something that's come from different life experiences, perhaps that you've had. And I know from prior conversations you've shared your background in journalism, and I'm curious maybe how that your career has that had anything to do with sort of the this evolution and this interest in this particular area.
Yeah, for sure it has. And it's funny because I kind of wish I could say that I grew up and as a youngster going to school at Indiana University, I wish I cared about the environment. I wish I knew what our food system looked like and the impacts of it on everyone's lives, not just folks that are living in rural communities, but also in urban centers as well. And I think I didn't know any of that stuff, and probably didn't care at that time. I was young and just not very issue oriented or
No, what number do you call to order pizza? Like, because we did have to call back. We're aging ourselves, but yes, we did
It's
have to call a number
it's true. And
and
so
put
I
our
didn't know
yeah,
about, these issues and didn't care, to be honest. But as
yeah.
I got older, I was a journalist. I did eventually, as soon as actually I graduated from Indiana University, I moved to New York City and continued to not know.
Yeah.
Actually, at the same time, it was the late 90s. I'll date myself. Mid to late 90s, I was living in New York City and farmers markets were popping up. And so in my
Mm,
head,
hmm.
as a young woman, living in a large city who didn't know how to cook, who didn't grow up learning how to cook or know anything about growing food or know how it was, how it got on the shelves of a grocery store. I grew up in Indianapolis on the South Side. I didn't have a lot of experience or a lot of interest in knowing those things. But I sort of idolized like this idea of like, oh, a farmer's market, that sounds really cool. I wish I could cook. I wish I knew what half of those foods were. I
Yeah.
would be really interested in someday. I envisioned myself as an older woman shopping at a farmer's market and taking fresh whole foods home and being able to do something with it.
And
And
knowing what to do with them before they wilt
exactly,
and you have to throw them away.
yeah. So there was just that idea, that sort of that seed
Yeah.
there in my head, and I didn't do much with it while I was throughout the years that I was living in New York City, and I was at that time again fresh out of college, just really trying to survive in a big city. That was kind of my mentality at the time. I wanted to get out of Indiana. I wanted to be in a big city,
Yeah.
and that's what I was doing. As I made my way back to the Midwest, first lived in Columbus, Ohio for a while, worked at an advertising agency there, and then eventually came back to Indiana. My mom had a stroke, and in 2004 decided to get back to Indiana to be closer to family. And that's kind of when I started working full time in journalism, which had been my area of study in college. And as I was an editor at Indianapolis Star and Indianapolis Monthly and other publications in Indianapolis, I eventually landed with a company called Home News Enterprises. I was married at the time, and I had an interest still in kind of learning how to grow my own food. I was kind of idolizing this rural lifestyle that I had pictured in my head with chickens and livestock and wearing overalls, which I love to do still today. Um, so it was really about sort of just exploring a new side of me. I had
Mm-hmm.
also, I should also say, it was pretty important and pivotal for me. In 2010, I started watching documentaries about food and their
Mm.
food as medicine and the impact of food on our lives. And learning about cancer and cancer rates and how that was associated with our food system and pesticides and all the things that go into our food, system today, and was really interested in it but didn't know why. Eventually moved out to Shelby County with my husband, was starting to do all the things that I had sort of envisioned for myself for my life, and
Yeah.
it was becoming interested in raising chickens. I got some goats, I got some alpacas, I got all the fun stuff, and was really and was planning a garden and growing food and then figuring out what to do with it. At the same time, I was editing a lot of publications, and my boss came to me one day and was like, "Why aren't you editing this publication called Farm Indiana?
Mm.
You're very interested in this. Why aren't you doing it?" And so I was
Mm.
like, "You're right. Why am I not also doing that?" So I kind of took on that publication as well.
Mm.
And through that work, really started learning about our food system in depth through stories. Really started understanding what a concentrated animal feeding operation was, which is what I described to you earlier, the
Yeah.
big barn
Yep.
where those animals are housed. And I really became passionate and, quite frankly, a biased journalist about
Mm.
the kinds of stories I wanted to publish. I wanted to talk about the issues around small farms versus big farms, what corporate agriculture looked like versus sustainable agriculture. Um, and I was just learning along the way. I was editing stories, I was assigning stories, and I was learning along the way and becoming very opinionated about what I was learning. So,
So being an independent journalist was becoming more challenging.
yeah, and I think nowadays maybe biased journalism is just a thing. But at the time, I knew consciously that I was in a place of that I was no longer the journalist who was trying to keep one side. I really wanted to support one side of the coin and not the other. And quite frankly, that went against the needs, advertising needs of the company that I worked for.
Mm.
They
Mm.
had been bought out by some investors from Texas, and those guys wanted to sell ads to big corporate agriculture companies, and I wanted to not do any stories.
Yeah, it how interesting would it be if if they eliminated, you know, pharmaceutical advertisements,
Yeah,
and I don't, some of the there's two or three companies that
yeah,
supply most of ultimately what's on the shelves.
yeah.
And if you were like, just how would the conversation?
Change.
So, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, that's so, and that's I mean, we're on this thing, we're having this conversation and I call it a podcast, which didn't, I mean, it's another form of radio, etc.
hmm,
And most of these they're ad free because no one is going to go out to chase money for an ad. But all of a sudden, it gets whatever it is. It's like, oh, we got to pay the bills. So we go to the classic old, the advertising model, and then
It
every
dictates a lot of what you do.
it
To this day,
real
social media influencers, podcasters, it's all the content that we are fed is oftentimes very heavily influenced by where the money comes from to
yeah.
those that
And
content.
how in so I'm curious in the work that you were doing with, tell me the publication again,
That was called Farm Indiana.
Farm Indiana.
Yeah.
Um, and so after what did that lead? So at some point,
Some
um,
point I launched, but not because I wanted to, but because I had to. So that company was a family-run company, and while it was family-run, I was incredibly supported by my bosses and by the owners to do what I wanted to do with that publication. It was eventually purchased by some investors from, as I mentioned, from Texas, and
okay.
that sort of changed the dynamic of the
Yeah.
organization, obviously, and so within I think about a year, I was laid off. I think pretty much the person I work for is now gone. The whole department I think that I was working,
Yeah.
everybody is pretty much gone. But and that publication is no longer as well. So I think there was a little bit of cleaning house, obviously, that was done. But in the years that I had been editing that publication, I really did a ton of networking throughout the state. I was meeting farmers, I was meeting advocates, I was meeting environmentalists, I was meeting policymakers, and just all kinds of folks who were working within the food system in Indiana. And really, just as I said, kind of just taking in all of this information and developing opinions about what was going on and knowledge about what was happening within our state. And so one of the advertisers that did advertise with us in that publication was an organization called Indiana Farmers Union. And so when that the day I got laid off from my job, I actually had a meeting with Indiana Farmers Union scheduled, and I had to call and say, hey, I'm not coming. I'm not working here anymore. And he was like, hold on a minute, wait a minute, we want to hire you. And so from that, I basically walked out of the door with actually a couple of different job offers from my connections in the food and agriculture space. I started doing some contract work with Purdue Extension. I started doing some work for Indiana Farmers Union, eventually kind of took over leading Indiana Farmers Union, and I was working very closely with National Farmers Union. That introduced me to sustainable independent family farmers all over the country, and
Hmm.
also introduced me to all of the issues that those smaller independent family farmers deal with on a daily basis in terms of trying to actually get access to markets, in terms of trying to get access to resources to survive, essentially, whenever they're in a game, again, with an uneven playing field where the corporations have all the power with our governments, have all the power with the markets, et cetera. So, as you mentioned, it's heavily concentrated, it's heavily consolidated, not only in big pharma, but in big food and big agriculture, et cetera. And so, the independent smaller farms, dairy farms are closing down. Everything that's happening throughout our country, our rural communities are being gutted economically because these large players, these large corporations have kind of taken control of our food system and really kicked out the little guys. And so I learned
What don't
about all of
yeah.
that, about all of the family farming issues through that work.
What are some of the, I guess, some of the aspects that the average person is not going to be aware of or is not going to understand when it comes to the dynamics of family farms? You talk about markets, you talk about big corporations. So those are, I would say a lot of people probably are generally aware. We hear of, I mean, the talk now is tariffs, but that's often a conversation of, even if it's not specific to tariffs, there is, I think, probably an awareness that we export some food products, we import some food products, and you could argue it makes no sense that bananas are available in the United States all the time, but somehow magically they
They
are. They are, right? So,
yeah.
and
Well, if you want to go back in time, what happened in counties all over the country, there was a bartering system. There were farmers, family farmers everywhere. There were hundreds of family farmers in rural communities who were growing their own food, raising their own animals, and they were trading what they didn't have. In Brown
Yeah,
County and the Bloomington area, there were huckster trucks going around selling or trading sugar, for instance, with people for eggs.
yeah,
And they'd go to the next guy and give the eggs away and get something else. And so there was a system in place that was very much communities feeding communities. We don't do that anymore.
yeah,
We have corporations feeding us, but what you mentioned is exports of commodity grains. Those aren't for food. That's not for us. That's the
right.
commodity grains. 80% of I think what's grown in corn and soybeans in our state and across our country is going toward these food animals that we're raising in these barns. So that system is all connected, and then a lot of it's being exported. These farmers are being encouraged to grow fence row to fence row. It's being used for ethanol. It's being used for corn syrup. I mean, whatever they can put it in,
Yeah,
they're putting it in. We're not growing real food in this country, which is actually a food security concern, which you're mentioning, because we're having to import food from out of state or even out of the country in order to feed our families. So we're not growing for one another and for ourselves. We're growing for animals. And to be honest, Smithfield, which is a Chinese-owned company, owns 1 in 4 pigs in this country. They're raising 1 in 4 pigs in this country, and then they're exporting those pigs to China to feed people over there. So we're getting the pollution of the pigs being raised here, and then that food is going to feed someone
it
else.
just when I hear those types of that, that's sort of the market. I'm like, how is it that we can afford, like, how has the market gotten so manipulated
Oh,
that
it's been
that
decades.
that that and I can't help but think it's public markets. It's all, I mean, it's
This
the
is Yep, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's not a problem that happened overnight, right? So
yeah.
this is but way back the 70s, the 80s. This is when these changes started happening, and so this is a problem that's kind of grown over the course of decades. So therefore, it's a problem that's very hard to fix and likely won't be fixed in our lifetime. Um,
Well,
so
I find it interesting, Sherry, that when I look back at photographs of, Americans back in the first half of the 20th century,
mhm.
like they're all sort of like they look average size. And now it's like we are not average size, right?
Because we're not eating average foods. Yeah, we're not
We're
eating
not,
whole foods. We're not eating
it's,
healthy. Yeah,
and so, you
we're not
know,
even producing those foods. And our government is not encouraging us to eat those foods. I mean, I went to DC. I used to go to DC a lot to talk to legislators, to participate in press conferences, to do all kinds of stuff. And I went to one, Food Not Feed. It was essentially what we're talking about. We need American farmers to be raising food for our communities. We don't need more corn and soybeans to be exported out of this country. We need real food. It's a food security problem. So,
so
yeah.
how do you,
And
what,
it's a
what,
health problem, as you mentioned. It's a public health.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, as a result, the rate of diabetes and the rate of I mean, there's
Everything. Everything. So,
everything,
yeah, I was,
everything, the side effect, but we are awesome at training people to be consumers. That is one thing we are really good at getting people to. Now, I know we're all being tricked into going, for the 2 for 1 and the deal and all that. But man,
yeah.
that's how we're trained. And so if you're trained, and I was trained to be I have a numbers background, so I'm doing that. I mean, I was like kind of obsessed with that. Then I realized I had a house and closet full of crap that I didn't want, but I got a great deal on all of it.
Yeah.
Um, but with you go to the grocery store and it's like, the cost of everything is right there.
Hmm.
And if you go to a farmer's market, it's like you almost have to put your, how I've been trained as a consumer, quantity, cost and quantity versus like we're not really that well trained with quality. we don't really know what the carrot, most of us don't really know what a carrot is supposed to taste like.
No,
And
I don't.
if you taste a carrot at the grocery store versus, a locally grown, it's kind of like, we're calling these both carrots?
Yeah,
These are not both carrots.
yeah.
But they call them that, but yet, I don't know. I'm, yeah, and yet I recognize that I have to sort of get over my, you know, looking for the deal habit
Yeah.
to be like, no, the
Well,
quality really matters.
okay. There's so many ways I can go with this conversation. So I'm going to break it. So basically what happened in the 70s is these large corporations got the government to agree to take away um, the price floor. Let's see, let me think if I'm wording it the correct way. So corporations didn't want to pay farmers a good rate for their products, a higher rate to help them actually make a living and pay, and feed their families. Um, I think Earl Butz, who is actually from Indiana, was the Secretary of Agriculture at the time, and he was convincing these farmers to grow, as I said, fence row to fence row, like put as much commodity in there as you can, product in there as you can. And the government agreed to subsidize the farmers so that the corporations could pay a lower rate to the farmers. So that's when subsidies came into play.
So that created like some level of guarantee to the farmer.
Exactly. So the corporation could save money and profit more, and the taxpayers paid for it. So we're paying those subsidies to go to those farmers because the corporations didn't want to pay the higher rate. Still to this
So
day.
you're saying that we're not, I've always said, look, people, you are not paying 99 cents for a dozen of eggs.
Never,
There,
never.
never, ever.
And now the prices are so crazy, they're not even cheap anymore. But if you're thinking about, I used to say like a $2 chicken sandwich at the fast food restaurant, it's not even that anymore.
No, think difference.
$19 or
Yeah,
whatever. But whatever it is, $9 chicken sandwich at the fast food restaurant. You think that's a good deal, or you used to think it was a good deal that you would get at the fast food restaurant. It's not because you're paying for it in the front with the subsidies that we're paying so the corporation can profit more. You're paying for the food, the shitty food, the processed food, the highly processed food, probably with corn syrup and every other chemical in it. And then on the backside, you're getting the cancer that you got from the way you've eaten your entire life because of how we're
yeah,
being taught to consume things, and because we eat too much, you're getting diabetes and you're getting all these other health problems, heart problems, and every other immune system problem that we can possibly imagine. And that's all because of what we're being sold. This line, that we're this bill of sale that we're being sold, that's just not, it's not healthy for us. And on top of that, our communities are reaping the harms of the operations that are in existence. The water, Indiana is, I think, the most polluted state when it comes to water. I haven't double checked that, so I shouldn't say that out loud, but I'm pretty sure we're up there. We're like one or two in terms of the worst pollution in our waterways. We can't even go out and recreate in rivers and streams anymore in our state because of what's happening in our agriculture system. So we
mm,
are heavily polluted, really sick, and it just keeps getting worse. And the corporations are making the money, and we are paying for it in pretty much every way, whether we live in a rural community or an urban center. Rural communities, I don't know if you've seen them, you drove through them, you drove
yeah, yeah,
past them all over the country, it sounds like, and they're gutted. They've got like a Dollar General and a Walmart, maybe if they're lucky.
yeah,
Grocery stores, for the most part, the independent grocery stores are gone. The independent doctors' offices are gone. The independent hospitals are gone. The independent schools are gone. There's just nothing left of those communities because there used to be hundreds of these smaller farms, and now there's these big 30,000 acre farms that are being managed by these corporations and these farmers. There's like five big farmers in a community, rather five farming families that are doing a lot of work and making money off of what they have and their acreage
yeah.
because they bought everyone out essentially.
Mm.
And so we've just changed the dynamics of everything about how we eat, about how we support about how we support life, in our country, whether it's animals, ecosystems, our bodies, etc. And it's all for the worse. So it's not an
We're gonna find, we will find a ray of hope here. People, stick with us, man.
yeah.
We're
I mean, this is the work that I do. So, but
yeah, no, I mean,
so
yeah,
I learned about it. I learned about, the aspects from the family farm,
yeah.
from that perspective, with working with National Farmers Union, which is a terrific organization, and Indiana Farmers Union. And then I moved on and started working with American Grassfed Association, which promotes agriculture, pasture-based agriculture, so raising animals on pastures rather than in these confined situations. I started working with Earthjustice, who really gave me the into all of the environmental impacts and all of the public health impacts, of this system on our bodies and on our life and on our world. And then I was doing consulting work for HSUS, the Humane Society of the United States. And so I was working and I'm learning about the animal welfare aspects, which is a whole other terrible existence for these animals that are within these systems. And I really, so I was learning about it from all these different angles. And kind of eventually made my way to Socially Responsible Agriculture Project. And to be honest with you, didn't want the job because I didn't want to think about pigs being stuck in cages all day, for the entirety of their lives. And so at the beginning, when I was talking to the board about taking this role, I was kind of hesitant because I thought I really love animals. I
Yeah.
don't even eat animals anymore. I'm not sure that I can handle the depression that might come from
Mm,
thinking about
mm,
animals in these
yeah.
really sickening situations. And I talked to them a little bit more, and I talked to them about that, and I ended up taking the job, and I'm so glad that I did because I honestly, that's what we fight. We don't fight. We fight the system, but what we really do, I don't think about the pigs in cages every day. I think about the people that we're empowering, the power of
Yeah.
their voices, the power of their lives, the power of their experiences, and how they can actually participate in the process. Even if it looks like they don't have any power, they actually do, and we see that through the community organizing and through the wins that we see with these cases. Whenever communities stand up and they speak up and they fight back against these operations coming in,
And what would you call a win at SRAP?
all kinds of things. It can be
Yeah.
one person who thought they had no power and no voice, and they decided that they actually do, because
Mm,
they're inspired by the people around them and that somebody listened to them.
mm.
It can be an operation doesn't come into existence. Somebody who was going to build a set of those buildings decides to not do it. They realize that they want to try a different route. We have several different programs which I can talk about for SRAP, but we teach people to water monitor and to use EPA standards to actually take water and to find out what the pollution situation looks like, and to work with agency officials to help them enforce regulations and to essentially hold those corporations that are polluting accountable to the pollution that they're bringing into communities. So that can be a win if we can, hold a corporation accountable, make an operation owner work harder to maintain their organization and to protect the waters and the watersheds around them. It just depends. There's lots of different ways that we can win. An operation can still end up going in, but if we can find ways to work with agency officials and to hold them accountable and to make sure that they're responsible to their neighbors and to be a good neighbor, then
Right.
that can also be a win.
Can you help me and our listeners have appreciate I'm trying I'm so we have like the corporate owner of these factory farms. Is that a fair, is that a appropriate
Yeah,
term?
yeah, absolutely.
Um, and there's, I mean, there's people that have to literally be there running these. Um, I can't imagine being there in that
It's a
environment.
public health situation for the owners themselves. I mean, Craig Watts, who works on the SRAP team, he talked about how he would have to wear, these big heavy masks to be able to go into these buildings. That's why they have those big fans. I mean, those animals are existing in their own waste. They're living in their own waste day
What,
in, day out.
what, how do they?
I can't, I don't know if you can imagine what it would be like to live across the road from 80,000 hogs. But to live in the building, with thousands of hogs, is really a situation that's, I can't imagine it myself.
How did these things come into like how did they even come into existence?
I
How
can't
like what?
her name, but there was one woman who actually started the first like factory farm. She decided to order, I think she accidentally ordered like 300 chickens or something. I forget what it was, but it was there's some story about some woman that she started the first one, and then from there it just I don't know the whole history of factory farms, but
I
yeah.
mean, do they do something from a is there like a finance piece that we just don't understand that somehow makes these attractive to the operator? You know,
It
like
makes them attractive. So, well, that's a whole other story. So,
yeah,
SRAP has three programs. At its heart, the core program is that community support program.
yeah,
And that is where, as I said, the folks will call essentially like a 911 number, and then we'll go to work to try to help them to figure out what they can do, how they can participate in the process and stop what's about to happen or what is happening.
yeah,
We have the Water Rangers program, which is the water monitoring program to help communities where there is already an operation, it's polluting, they know it's polluting, and they can kind of hold them accountable by doing water monitoring and to, as I said, work with agencies. Our third program that we have is our contract grower transition program. So contract growers are oftentimes these farmers who have a multi-generational farm. They decide that they want to get into it, they hear about it, they're told from the industry that this is a great way to get into farming, it's a great way to keep your kids on the farm. If you just work hard, you're going to make tons of money. What they don't tell them is that I'm pretty sure this is still consistent, but 70% of poultry growers who are raising poultry in this country are living below the poverty line. They
hmm,
have to sign these contracts with these corporations, these integrators, that will keep them sort of harnessed, you know, stuck within this system. They
yeah,
have to take the feed, the animals. They're essentially like daycare
yeah,
caretakers of these animals,
yeah,
and they have to do
yep,
exactly what the corporation says. They have to take the money that the corporation is willing to pay them, and they really have almost zero rights to fight back. They can't speak up. They can get blacklisted. They can have the industry refuse to give them more animals, and they are taking on all of the debt, all of the risk. So they have to actually build the buildings, and they own
hmm,
nothing else. They have to
hmm,
manage the manure, and they have to take on the debt, go millions of dollars into debt to build the buildings. And then the industry owns everything that makes money. They own everything that costs money. So it looks like, and we have a Growers Unite website that we just actually launched, where we're working with trying to help growers get out of that system because oftentimes they're stuck in that system because of the millions
yeah,
of dollars that they
yeah,
have that they owe. They
yeah,
feel afraid to speak up. They feel afraid to fight back or to try to say anything about the situation that they're now stuck in, that they didn't realize they were going to get stuck in. And so we have this contract grower transition program where we really try to connect them with experts and try to help them get out of that system. They are
hmm,
sold, that story of you can make all this money and you can keep your kids on the farm and you can protect your family farm that you've had for generations by doing this for us.
yeah,
They are sold that from the realty company, from the banks that work with these integrators, with these corporations. They're sold from the trade organizations that are supported by these corporations, by decision makers. I mean, everywhere they look, they're being told this is a great idea. You should go into this. But they're not understanding the impacts on public health, the fact that, they're going to be dealing with debt. They're not sure there's a tournament system where they have to compete with one another, and they have literally um,
hmm,
no control over whether or not they're going to do well or not because the industry can give them sick birds, thousands of them. The industry, if they get mad at them, they can give them, less feed so their bird isn't as healthy or as high of a weight compared to their neighbor. And if that happens, then they get punished. There's a lot of things that are sort of built into this system that really goes against the farmer that they don't understand going in. So what we're trying to do is to get them to reach them before they sign on the dotted line, just so they at least understand what it looks like from the
yeah.
side. So we
And
have
if it,
three former contract growers on our team.
okay. So speaking from people that can obviously speak from experience.
Yes. Yeah. So, and we also have, we work with, an advisory board of folks who are other growers that have been through these experiences. Some of them have been gone bankrupt. Some of them have lost their farms. Some people, to be quite honest, suicide is a huge, huge problem
Mm,
with among farmers in the U.S. So, um, sometimes a win is just getting someone to not kill themselves because they think
mm,
they're going to lose their multi-generational farm
yeah.
and their family won't have a place to live. So
Mm,
it's pretty. This all sounds very dreary. We're going to get to somewhere where we're going to find hope, but it's a really shitty system, to be honest. And so there's a lot of problems with it, and it's hard to change. The easiest way we could possibly change all of these problems is for the government to change what they support. But
we
uh,
are, by the way, people, we are the government.
we,
People forget, we always forget that. We think like if, the government,
I
yeah,
wish I agreed with you. I'm not sure I do. We are certainly, we should be listened to, but the industry wields a lot of power within.
yeah, no, 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 yeah, yeah. I'm saying that it's collectively our tax dollars are in one
Yeah,
way,
we're
shape, or
paying for
another.
it for sure.
We're paying for
We're
it.
paying for it.
Uh,
I'm not sure we're
I
being
think
listened to.
I think they're very creative at finding ways for us to pay for it, but yet we forget that
Yeah,
we're
well,
actually
I
pay,
mean,
that we're paying for it.
and to be honest, too, people, because of a lack of understanding and education around what the impacts actually are and why all of this stuff matters, and simply time and life and all of the
Yeah,
it's hard to engage on every issue that might be impacting you in a negative way and you don't even know about it. I do this work every day and I tell people all the time, I don't know what I eat. I go to
yeah,
the grocery store. I can go to a farmer's market. When I lived in Bloomington, I'm a member of Blooming Foods, the co-op. I can buy from my farmer friend as much as I want, but unless I grow it myself or I buy from my farmer friend and I travel all over the state to go to Gunthorpe Farms or Hawkins Family Farm or, Joseph DeQuee up north, like unless I get the food from my friends and or grow it myself, I don't know what I'm eating. We do not know what we're eating when we buy at the grocery store. I don't care if it's Whole Foods or Kroger or
yeah.
in whatever, Walmart. We don't know what that food is. We don't know how it was raised, and we don't even know what's in it.
No.
So,
And I would, and the fact that, you know, things that are labeled, for example, label it organic, all of a sudden it's got to cost twice as much. And I'm like, is that really? How strict? Because I know we humans tend to try and hack every rule that there is. And so, but yet, this idea, again, with the consumer mindset, that idea that, why would I buy that chicken that costs three times as much as this chicken?
yeah, and
Is it chicken? And
that's a food
it's,
insecurity problem too. So there are everything that we're talking about is a systemic problem that
yeah,
needs a very deep fix, and it's it's a problem that's taken decades for us to get here, and it will take decades for us to dig out of it. So
are there any systemic changes that, because I think often the individual can think, well, what can I do? And it feels hopeless. But are there are there systemic changes that you believe would, or I should say, what systemic changes do you feel would make the biggest impact where we, the customer, the consumer, didn't even know it changed, but we benefited from it? Does that make sense?
well, policy, government policy that supports the right kind of agriculture versus this other industrialized agriculture that doesn't support health, doesn't support life, doesn't support the environment, doesn't support any of the things that we need. It's policy has to change vastly. Like I don't know that it will happen. There's a farm bill that's the biggest piece of legislation that has everything to do with our food system. That gets sort of this band-aid approach every 5 years. They'll try to fix one thing here, one thing there. It needs to be completely trashed and rewritten, to be honest with you. It's not.
What are the forces that, if you got a bunch of people sitting around with probably just general, you know, common sense could probably see what some of the challenges are. Um, I mean, is it big corporations? Is that,
Yeah, I mean, I think largely, yes, absolutely. They wield a lot of power within our government, more so than you and I. Even though our
Mhm.
tax dollars are involved, our voices are not as powerful and weighty
Yeah.
as the voices or the needs and wants. And you also have something called agency capture, where half of the people that are working in the government have worked at those industry corporations. So there's a revolving door in and out of the government of who's making the decisions around our food system. And they are very much tied to these corporations and industry interests. So that is first and foremost the easiest and most effective way to fix these changes. I don't see it happening anytime soon. Certainly not within today's administration. Um, so what we can do on the ground is, I always say when people ask me that kind of a question of like what people could do, I mean, it is a matter of like if you can afford to buy your eggs or your cheese or your meat or whatever protein that you consume, if you can do that, I would encourage people to do that from someone that they know. Um,
Mm.
Grow a garden, you know, rebel against the system by growing your own food and supporting and purchasing from folks that also raise their own products and you know how they're raised, and you support how they're raised. So certainly, if folks can do that, I would encourage them to do that. On the other hand, I know people's lives are busy, but there are issues that are being discussed at local levels, at state levels, regional, federal levels. I would say participate in that process. Become civically minded. Figure out what's happening. Try to educate yourself on what's happening in around these issues if they matter to you, or if they matter to you to take care of your community or your family, future generations of your family, um, and start participating in that process. Telling your story, telling decision makers, lawmakers why these things matter. These are a lot of the things that we fight for are not. We're not anti-animal agriculture. We're not, trying to um, get rid of people eating meat or saying that raising animals is bad. We are actually just trying to put in common sense, as you said, common sense safeguards to protect communities. We all have a lot of the same values. We want people to be healthy. We want our families to be healthy. We want future generations to have water, access to clean air and
Yeah.
clean water and clean food to eat. And that is common sense. And those are values that we can all agree on. So how do we actually work together to find a better future, a better present, and a better future
Mhm.
for our families and for our lives?
And how has this for you, Sherry? How has this this years of awareness, how has it impacted like your day-to-day relationship with food yourself? Like, and I guess you alluded to a little bit of some of the, farmers that you buy from, sounds like,
Well, I stopped
and
eating meat, so I started raising chickens and decided I didn't want to eat them anymore. So I don't actively go out and buy meat from farmers anymore. When I do buy it for my significant other or for friends or family, I'll go and I'll buy from like Tyner Pond Farm up in Greenfield. That's a great regenerative farm that's up there. I do try to support, my farmer friends whenever I can. If I'm in Bloomington, I'll shop at the co-op. I think, ultimately, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but in 2017, I was actually diagnosed with breast cancer. Um, and that was really kind of a wake-up call to,
mm, mm,
again, I think sort of the 2010 era of Sherri, where she started gardening, and started watching all these food documentaries, kind of in 2017 when she actually got the cancer she was learning about. I think
yeah,
I was
yeah,
juicing, I was eating every green vegetable I could eat. I was going through holistic functional medicine treatments at the time in 2017 and paying for all of it out of my pocket because our insurance system and our healthcare system doesn't pay for anything. It's all considered alternative, which is also ridiculous. But I was fighting that situation, and ultimately, I think for me, for my everyday, at that time, I was building out my first small farm. I've since transitioned to another farm here in Boggstown, Indiana, which we can talk a little bit about what I'm trying to do here. But essentially, what I was trying to do, and I still am trying to do, is to I guess lead by example, although
Hmm.
the idea of that sounds egotistical and I hate saying that out loud, but I think I want to just live my life and talk about these things and create conversation and
Yeah.
show people that I care about animals. I've never had children, so my mothering instincts come out with my donkeys and my goats and my chickens and my cats and dogs. And
That actually, if any of you have a chance to visit all of our animals, that explains a lot, but I'll let you all decide for yourself. But anyhow.
Yeah, so but I think it's around, creating conversation and hosting folks to really come out and to talk about and to learn about and to inspire advocacy for people to actually become engaged within their food system. So I
Mm,
created a small nonprofit here on the farm that I'm about to launch the website for, and it's called Dog Song Sanctuary. We have animals. We're going to be hosting a storytelling summit later on in the summer with a lot of organizations coming from all over the country here to do some work with impacted community members and farmers and to hopefully bring them together with media folks and also social media influencers. So we're going to be doing some storytelling and having hosting some dinners and really what I'm trying to do here on the farm. We have this gorgeous 1874 Italianate home. And we're going to be hosting dinners and really trying to bring together unlikely um, friends, I guess
mm,
I'll call them.
hmm.
But
Yeah.
if I can bring artists, if I can bring eaters, if I can bring farmers, legislators all together around a dinner table and to maybe curate some conversation, ask three questions and see what everybody has to say. And these are
Mm,
folks that would have maybe never met, never shared dinner together, never gotten in the same room. And I'm going to try to start
mm,
doing those and hosting a couple of those here soon on the farm as well. And just really trying to figure out how you're through your podcast are creating conversation and just
yeah.
inspiring food for thought, kind of situation. And I think it's the same thing here. Bring folks here. We're about 25 minutes from Indianapolis, not super far, to get urban folks to come out here and to visit. And just as I said, create spaces where people can talk to one another, learn about what's important to each other, and really figure out ways that they might be able to participate in the process to building a better future. So I guess if there's one spark of hope in all of this conversation, it might be just trying to get people engaged and curious about
Yeah.
what's happening around them and how they might be able to participate.
Mm. And that is, tell me the name of the space again. It's called,
So the house we're calling the Wheelwright, and we'll be hosting events of all sorts here. But
yeah,
Dog Song Sanctuary is the nonprofit that I've started on my own, and that's
Dog, DOG,
Song.
Song, Song,
Yes,
Sanctuary.
sanctuary. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm about to launch the website. It's almost done. But that's going to bring rural and urban communities together through conversation and creativity and advocacy to support, as I mentioned, animals and the environment and the communities that they feed. So
Yeah.
that's essentially our mission.
Beautiful.
And yeah, so we'll be doing lots of fun events here as well. So
Nice.
stay
Well, I
tuned.
can tell you, I have um, real recently really started to pay attention as best I can to food and the the taste and the texture and the nutrition and really comparing, what you get when you buy it directly from a farmer or you grow your own versus, what we're trained
Yeah,
to purchase in the grocery stores. And it's like night and day.
it
It's
really is.
really, and so it's like it's hard to imagine, but when you think from a consumer perspective, if you actually eat real quality food, you need about maybe a third.
Yeah.
Like we are trained in this again, consumers is like more is better. And you go out to eat and it's these massive plates and you're like, this is great. But
Yeah.
it's not great. And the quality, and the reason
We're
why
starved for nutrition.
yeah.
You should talk to Chris Baggett from Tyner Pond Farm. He's really interesting. You would find him really interesting. He's in Greenfield, but he talks about that all the time. He actually changed completely the way he was eating. And he also had a cancer diagnosis some years ago. He talks about it pretty openly, so I don't think I'm sharing it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think, from that, he's gotten exponentially healthier. And it's really around nutrition, the food that he's raising. He's eating, the products from his own farm, and has cut out all processed foods. Lost a ton of weight just from doing that, and has feels better than I think at least from what he's told me. I think he feels better
Yeah.
than he ever has. So it's a lifestyle choice for sure, and it's an education choice for sure, and not everybody can do it. And I don't think in our lifetime, people aren't going to stop eating meat. They're not going to stop. They're not going to give up their Doritos or whatever it is that they love to eat. But I think we can make, and I love cheese and talk about it and celebrate cheese all the time. And it's probably not the healthiest thing for me to eat. But
But if it's good, but if it's like if it's really, I mean, if you've had real like,
yeah,
awesome quality cheese, like you don't
yeah,
need the whole block, right? I mean, like there's
yeah.
so much you might still want to eat it, but there's so much richness, right? Versus the cheap, inexpensive stuff that,
Well,
you
and
know,
so a lot of the way food is raised and the way it's shipped and distributed from other countries across the country to, to our grocery store shelves, it's by the time it gets to our grocery store shelf, the nutrients are gone if they were ever
yeah.
there in the first place because of the way it was grown. And so we're eating a completely different food than our ancestors are eating.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we're also, or I should say, we're eating a completely different food like product, which is oftentimes what
Yeah.
it actually is
Yeah.
instead of an actual food. But the other thing is, eggs. The typical egg that's on a grocery store shelf is 42 days old by the time you buy it. Yeah, we're raising chickens here on the farm, and we've got eggs out, so many dozens of eggs just sitting around that are 2 days old and 3 days old, that we're basically just giving them away to our friends and family right now because we are overloaded in eggs. But I mean, those are very fresh eggs that you can let sit on the counter for a few days and not worry about it going bad. Um,
Yeah.
and so I went out to California. This was years ago with National Farmers Union and was on an organic berry farm. And I was eating raspberries, and I swear to you, they tasted like cotton candy. I have never had strawberries and raspberries that tasted so sweet. I did not know that's what they tasted like. And it made me realize that the strawberries and raspberries that we eat in our grocery stores don't actually taste like anything. It was crazy. And I was picking them straight out of the field and eating them without even washing them. They were delicious. It was crazy, the
Hmm.
difference in taste from California organic berry farm to what we get
Yeah.
in our grocery stores.
Hmm.
So,
Well, I'm looking forward to the dog song sanctuary.
me too.
And yeah, and the opportunities that you're talking about. I mean, I try and do that with my little house concerts of just bringing people together from different walks of life, to just be able to appreciate. You hear a story, and some of them really will, in some, if the student is ready, they will hear what it is that it's time for them to hear, and it'll really make a difference. So I do recognize when you're in the world of doing the kind of work that you're doing, you can probably feel thankless a lot of the time. Um, but then hopefully you get that win every once in a while where you really know that you've changed a life or you've changed a community. Um, and it keeps you,
Keeps them going. Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps you
Yeah,
going.
my job is easy because I get to have these kinds of conversations and, essentially sort of just it's about building relationships with other organizations and partner
Yeah,
organizations and funders, et cetera. But the folks that are down doing the work, in these
yeah,
communities, those are my team. Those are the people that inspire me. Like they see not only the impact on these communities and on real human lives when it doesn't go well,
yeah.
and they also get to celebrate those incredible. I mean, I've seen my teammates in tears lots
Mm,
of times because both for good and bad reasons.
yeah, yeah,
It's heavy work that we do, but it's also so rewarding when you can really, really help communities stand up for themselves and protect their futures, and get them out of terrible situations. And just it's
yeah.
incredible the work that we can do and the impact that it can have on lives every day. And so that's been really great and really rewarding. And I don't want to quit anytime soon. And my team is
Hmm.
amazing, and I'm just really proud of
Nice.
them. They're scattered all over the country, and
Right.
they go to work and they care about it. I don't think they ever stop working. My biggest
Mm,
fault with them is to get them to stop on days off,
mhm.
but they care about what they do. So.
Yeah, of course. I like to wrap up, Sherry, conversations with, is there anything that I failed to ask that you wanted to share about, or anything that you still like to share about that we didn't get a chance to cover during this time?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if folks, want to know more about SRAP, that's sraproject.org. If they want to know about Dog Song Sanctuary and what we're going to try to do here on the farm in Boggstown, we're about 20 minutes or so southeast of Greenwood. And I've got a Facebook page that they can visit. I'm about to launch, as I said, the website, so we'll get that information soon. But I think it's really just, if you're curious, if you want to learn more, if you want to have a conversation, if you want to attend an event, we're going to be having them this year throughout the year. So just stay tuned and stay in touch.
Nice.
And,
Sweet. And we'll include all the appropriate handles and hashtags and URLs in the show notes, as they say.
I appreciate it.
So
Yeah.
we'll
So
make sure.
thank you for having me. I really
Awesome.
appreciate it. And I hope
Yeah.
I didn't talk too fast or too long. There's like about 6 hours we could probably talk about the food system
Yeah.
and all the stuff that goes wrong with it. But
Well, this was a good primer. Good
yeah,
primer for the pump. Thanks,
yeah.
Sherry.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank
You
you.
bet.
Bye.
Stories from the heart, stories honest and true, the one